All right. So that, of course, was the BJP delegation there meeting with the governor at Raj Bhavan. That was a press conference by senior BJP leaders after meeting with the governor in Rajasthan. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Thanks for staying with us on NewsX. We are now turning to our big focus this hour. A special flight of Israeli scientists is heading to India this week. The team will work in fact, with their counterparts to finalize 4 breakthrough pandemic-related technologies. These breakthroughs are to detect the presence of SARS-CoV-2 pathogen that causes coronavirus. These include 2 COVID-19 tests that could give results in minutes from a saliva sample, a third that could tell if a person has incipient COVID by listening to their voice, and a fourth, a virus detector that uses radio waves on a breath sample. The first phase of testing of these technologies was done in Israel, and the last stage will now be carried out in India. This will mean you can be tested as you enter an airport, a mall, or anywhere and be cleared. A real-time test which would allow the economy open again. Well, for more on this path-breaking potential collaboration, we have joining us at this point on the broadcast, Maya Kadosh, Deputy Chief of Mission of the Israel Embassy in India. Welcome, Maya. Thank you very much for joining us on NewsX.
Hi. Good evening.
My first question to you is on, on this amazing, potential plan of collaboration between Israel and India. So how many Israeli scientists are really expected to touch down in India, and when are they arriving?
So they will come this week. We are talking about the 30 scientists that are going to come here to India to work with about 100 Indian scientists. So overall, we have a very big team working in 2 sites, hoping to achieve 20,000 checks by the end of the week.
Okay, fantastic. And what's the objective, Maya? If you can just tell our viewers, what's the objective of this potential collaboration?
So I think we all, in our personal life, want to get back to normal as we can live. And since we all know a vaccine is going to take some time now, we are trying to figure out what will be the safest way to go back to business. We think that having tests done under 30 seconds can actually allow us to get a lot of our life back, whether it's travel, vacations, restaurants, and obviously to recognize where the risk is in much cheaper price and much quicker and close the infection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I just want to talk about, there's a host of innovations that you're planning and we're planning, of course. I just want to, speak once about this test first. So it's, of course, going to be a test which will be, in minutes, we can get the result. Is that correct? So this is a test which could give results in seconds or minutes?
Yeah, we are talking about 30 seconds to a minute.
Fantastic. And so this could happen, as you said, when people enter an airport, when people enter a mall or a school, anywhere, right?
Exactly. That will be very cheap, very easy to perform. The voice one will be extremely easy. If that's possible, that I think will be the cheapest and the easiest way. It's just an app on your phone. But even the saliva one and the breath ones will make it under a minute.
Absolutely. So there are 2 tests, right, if I'm not mistaken, that are being planned from a saliva sample. So there are 2 tests which are going to be swab tests, like it's done right now from a saliva sample. What's the difference between the 2 tests?
So they're both, I'm not the scientist here, so they're both testing different angles of disease with different technologies. It's not PCR. It's not going to be into your nose and deep into your throat. It's not going to be painful at all. It's just like taking a bit of saliva from your cheek. Yeah. So again, it's much quicker and easier.
Okay. And the third one, interestingly, is if a person has COVID by listening to their voice. That's quite brilliant, and that's quite an inception if it does take place.
So we already conducted, as you say, the first stage in Israel, and we saw that you can easily actually recognize by voice if a person has or don't have COVID, and in quite early stages, actually. This also can be tested on apps. So that's like something that everyone can download to his phone and do it very quickly for himself. If he wants to wake up in the morning, if he should or shouldn't go to work, he can do it. Yeah, and it's something we are very looking forward to this.
Okay, and is it because people's voice changes because of COVID, because of course the lungs, and is it the pitch changes? I mean, how can it be detected through someone's voice? It's fascinating to just learn. And since you said tests have begun, first stage trials have begun in Israel, so possibly you can just tell us what's the kind of method being used.
So what we've done is, what our researchers done is took a lot of samples into like this big database, and we ran through AI tests and compared sick people with healthy people, and there was a difference, most probably because of the effects on the breath system, the effects on, as we already know, the smell and taste systems, and also on the voice system. The more data we have, and hopefully more people we test, like it's female, it can be young people, old people, female and male, then we will have a better database and we can make more analyze on that. So what we are going to do is take all these samples, put them on a cloud, and researchers from both India and Israel are going to work together to figure out what the changes they see, what they can predict for the future, and how much this is reliable comparing to the PCR we know.
Okay, and the fourth, of course, is a virus detector that uses radio waves on a breath sample. So obviously, because the virus attacks the lungs, so our breath would change. Our breathing technique would change, and of course, it would become heavier after one has the virus. So this is quite interesting. So the fourth test, Maya, is basically using radio waves on a breath sample, isn't it?
Yeah, it's for the regular person, it will be something very similar to breathalyzer, like we do when we want to find alcohol in breath in driving. This is how it looks like.
Okay.
And again, we've done the first trials in Israel, and it works very well. And now we will have bigger pool of samples, and we can work it out.
Okay. Now, I'm being told that, of course, the first phase of these tests has already been conducted. So, is that correct? That the first phase of all these four tests has already been conducted in Israel, and it's going to be the last stage, which will happen in India. So, I'll come to the India one in just a second. But how have the tests panned out? So, how have the first trials, the first phase trials in Israel been? Have they been successful? Were there any hiccups? Were there any problems? Or has everything gone smoothly?
So I think what happened in the Israeli ecosystem, it's built from the defense, academy, startups, industry. And when the COVID started, and it's very similar to India. So when COVID started, we brought all these people together around one table and told them, bring us the best technologies you have, and let's see what we can do with that. In Israel, the person that heading this effort is Dr. Danny Gove. He invented Iron Dome that protects Israeli citizens to security threats and defense threats. And he's now heading this roundtable of companies and researchers. And from all the technologies that were presented to him, he chose these four, and we started clinical trials. And the results came quite good. He presented the same to his counterpart here, the chief scientist of India, Dr. Agavan, and he showed the results and he proved what he lot of interest in that. Your scientists done some similar tests, I must say. And I think now when people will come together and work on it, we can actually come to a breakthrough.
Absolutely. So the last stage is going to be carried out in India, right? It's going to be the last stage, and if this is a success, then they can potentially be rolled out. So it's going to be interesting. So collaboration between Israel and Indian scientists for the last stage of these four tests, right?
Exactly, and that I think represents the bigger picture of our relation. This it's not by accident that we work with India. The relation and the defense relations and the research relations are there for a long time. There is a lot of trust between our scientists. There's common language. I think also common sense of we can do it. We can do this breakthrough. We can help our economies. Let's do thinking out of the box. And that's what brought this project to come to life.
Absolutely. How cheap, though, would these tests be, or would they be very expensive? I think that's the next question.
No, it's going to be much cheaper than PCR tests, um, but I don't think there's a price yet. But it's going to be much cheaper. That's
Okay,
the
so it's not going to be out of reach of the average Indian and the average Israeli. That's very reassuring. So these are going to
the
be
idea is that huge places like hospitals, schools, government offices can easily use it. So definitely it's going to be
absolutely.
very cheap.
And this could potentially help our economy and the countries open up again. It could give us a huge advantage in going back to the old normal pre-COVID, isn't it?
It's almost to get us to pre-COVID. We will still need to test before we enter anywhere, but
Yeah.
it will allow us much more freedom, and it will give us time until the vaccine will come. You know, we already know that it will take years until the vaccine will come, and then it will take time to have everyone vaccine. So this will give some safety net in the time.
Okay. Just a couple of larger questions now. Obviously, you were just telling us that this signifies how close India and Israel is working together on a host of issues, and of course, on this issue as well. Do you believe that as well, that this signifies the closeness between Israel and India scientists, of course, but also the closeness between Israel and Indian policies, that we working together in security, in trade, but also in science, and of course, in COVID testing?
Yeah, of course. So first, we see the results since the COVID started, and what we are talking about, maybe 4 months. Our prime minister spoke already 3 times. There were also calls between our foreign minister and yesterday between our defense ministers, and all of them say we need to bring this. First of all, we need to help each other out when we can. And the other thing that I didn't say before, but this plane is going to bring some new technologies for Ames Hospital that are not relevant to the testing. It's just donation of the people of Israel. Some of our companies, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, going to bring whatever Ames ask for. We also allowed, even though Israel is now facing itself second wave of COVID, we allow export of ventilators to India, to the Tamil Nadu government, which is very much needed here. And we understand it, and we see India as our ally and friend. And when they need something, we do our best to be there for them, which is the same what we felt in the beginning, because the first wave in Israel was a bit before India, and things that we needed from India, we also received. So I think definitely our leaders are talking about this such things and helping each other out.
Absolutely. Let me also ask you about a potential vaccine as well, because that's the next question. So we need, of course, effective testing, and fast testing, cheap testing, but we also need a vaccine. So is there a potential collaboration happening on that front as well, Maya?
I think both Israel and India have few very interesting projects on that. Also, other countries in the world. I can't say which one will be first. I definitely know there is interest in the work that is done in Israel from the Indian side, but there's also a lot of interest from the Israeli side at work that's being done here in India. And I hope we will see a vaccine soon.
Okay, and if we talk about the current India-Israel relations, of course, very close, very strategic. But do you believe at a juncture like this, we need to come closer? There's going to be a new COVID-19 world developing. New superpowers, new equations, new axes forming. We're seeing, of course, the sentiment against China in many quarters as well. Do you believe in, given this current circumstance, there is need to come closer to forge, further ties, get perhaps an entire alliance going, and also work together, particularly in matters of national security and integration?
Israel and India is strategic partnership. I think also Israel and India share the same values. We are both democratic countries. Our leaders see the world in a very similar way. They face many challenges when it comes to the security of their own people, and they work together to achieve this goal.
Absolutely. And if we talk about Israel, Maya, just inform our viewers, how is Israel doing in its fight against COVID? what are the kind of numbers of cases there and how you've been handling the situation?
So Israel is now facing second wave. We've done very well. We have only few cases a day. We opened the economy, we opened the schools, we opened a lot of the events hall. Well, that didn't work extremely well. So we're now facing about 2,000 cases a day. But our government is every day looking at the regulation, putting new regulation in place. And where we open and we shouldn't have, we go back and what we can allow, and we want to allow, obviously, the economy, we want to allow people to work. We try to keep that open. We are still open, our education system open, because we discovered that children get less infected than adults. So the education system is open, and we are trying to keep our life normal when possible, but also to be very cautious about what steps we need to take, and the cooperation from people, from the population. Each one needs also to watch over himself, and it's very similar to what's going here and what's going on all over the world. If we all need to be responsible in the end of the day to put our masks, to wash our hands, to keep social distancing. We know for fact now that these things are working, and it's a combination.
Absolutely. If we talk about defense ties as well, are we stepping up our defense ties as well? Intelligence sharing, also, of course, strategic joint exercises in the military domain. Do you believe those ties also need to be stepped up? And are we constantly working towards that?
We always work for that. Obviously, now it's very hard to get any visits done because of the flight issues and quarantine issues. But yesterday we had a talk between the defense ministers, which agree to work together to enhance the relations between the countries. All this time of the COVID, there was conversation between our professionals, between our armies, between our industries. Israel is also trying to understand the new priorities India has now is Make in India, and how we can be part of it when it comes to defense. And I think we are going on the right way.
Okay, we're going on the right way, and we certainly hope for more strategic cooperation between our two countries as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast, Maya Kadosh, Deputy Chief Mission of the Israel Embassy, and let's hope for success for this collaboration that's going to begin perhaps by the end of this week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Let's move on. More breaking news coming in.